and share our work with you. It's a disclaimer, actually, I got COVID 2 days ago, so I might not be in my best shape now, so but I'll try my best, okay? So I'm originally from Bangladesh and moved to Australia almost 19 years ago as a young medical graduate to study public health. And then I was trained in pediatrics and public health. And at some point in my career, felt that I need to go back to my country, home country. And it was around 2012 when I first went back again to work with children with disability. And it was not planned. At the time, we were doing a study called Childhood Disability Key Informants Method Study, CD-KIM study, funded by CBM, and it was sponsored by LSHTM and implemented by CSF Global, an international NGO based in Bangladesh. As part of that, we did a small project on infectious cause of childhood disability, where we found nearly 900 children with severe physical impairment from a small sub-district in Bangladesh. And of those, there were around 427 children with cerebral palsy, 859 children with severe impairment, and 427 had CP. So I was a pediatric registrar at the time, did the study, came back, and we published, and is now online, infectious cause of childhood disability in tropical pediatrics. And it showed 20% of childhood disability could be attributed by childhood infections, which are vaccine prevented. But I think that was a start. And from that point, actually, I started feeling actually what we can do about those children with cerebral palsy and other disability. Because when we went to the field, we found there was no support services for those children. And that's how the idea of Bangladesh Cerebral Palsy Registry came up. And subsequently, we went back in 2014, and the journey actually continued. So I think today's presentation, those who joined this year's SAPDM conference, probably this was one of the keynotes, so probably, sorry, I will be repeating most of it. But those who have not been there, probably it will be new to you. So before I start, I'd like to acknowledge all the parents and children with cerebral palsy and other disability that we care for and we work with, and they're the key. And also to the team and collaborators. I'm just a small part of it, and I think the work is done collectively, namely Prof. Mohit, here you can see President of CSF Global, Prof. Nadia Badawi, she's the current chair of Cerebral Palsy at Cerebral Palsy Alliance. My two-star PhD students, Ishraz Zahan and Mahmoudul Hassal Imam, both have done a stunning job finishing their PhD and also managing the field site in Bangladesh. And then Rosalie Power, Haley Smida Shiri, and Sarah McIntyre, Tazlim Karim, and other team, and also a field team in Bangladesh and in few other countries. They're the real heroes who does the job. So as I was telling that in 2014, when we were thinking to do something about those children with cerebral palsy, one striking finding at the time, a very basic PubMed search showing cerebral palsy in Australia and cerebral palsy in Bangladesh, showed the inequity in research in childhood disability, particularly CP. You can see Australia with a country of 24 million, there were over 1,000 publications on cerebral palsy, whereas Bangladesh, a country of 166 million, had only 13 scientific papers in PubMed. So that triggered probably our drive that as a researcher, as clinicians, what you can do. And our goal is very simple, is to make those children visible through data, do high quality research, mostly translational research and operational research, and through this research actually to make those children visible and support those children and generate evidence. So I'm very proud. If you search now, the same terms, it shows 69 papers from 30 to 69 in 8 years, and I think we can take most of the credit. I think our team has published enormously in this field, which most of this I will share in the presentation. So 2014, we put a small grant application to Cerebral Palsy Alliance project grant, and we got $30,000 to do a pilot study to establish the Bangladesh Cerebral Palsy Registry, a population-based surveillance of children with cerebral palsy in a sub-district of Bangladesh. Interesting to say that out of this $30,000, $23,000 were kept in Australia to design the database, and for the field work, we were given $7,000. And there were a lot of goodwill, in kind, and shared resources between this project and CSF Global, which made it possible. Just to say that we didn't start with $1 million, we didn't start with $100,000. It was like literally $7,000 Australian dollar research support that we started with, and not long ago, 2014. So what we did, we targeted that particular sub-district with a population of just over 500,000, with child population of nearly 215,000. And we used key informants method. Those who are familiar or not familiar, I think in key informants, we use local volunteers as key informants. So a paid project staff that we call community mobilizer goes to villages and do social mapping and try to find out who are the people in that particular community who will have the whereabouts of children with disability. Because we know in low-income setting there are stigmas, and often the mainstream sources actually don't capture information on disability. Because a female child with disability might jeopardize the, or male child in a family might jeopardize the marriage prospect for other family members, and so on, so on. So it's a social mobilization strategy where KIs are drawn from the community. They are school teachers, local traditional healers, doctors, NGO workers, local council members, politicians, you name it. So what CM does, community mobilizers does, when they make a list of key informants, they then organize a half day or up 2 to 3 hours long workshop and explain them actually what are the physical signs of the conditions of our interest here, cerebral palsy. And it's mostly physical, and you can explain it through pictorials and videos and things like that. With that basic knowledge, they're given 4 to 6 weeks to go back to their community and share a list of the children with suspected or possible cerebral palsy. And then what we do, we organize local outreach camps, multidisciplinary medical assessment camps, where physio, other allied health professionals, doctor, psychologists, and other project team members actually go and do on-site assessment, clinical assessment based on BCPR Proforma, which is adopted from SCPR, Australian CP Registry, and SCP, Surveillance of Cerebral Palsy in Europe guideline. And we try to make a clinical diagnosis of cerebral palsy, and then from that point, actually, we also collect information on their risk factors, severity, GMFCS, max, associated impairments, possible timing of the of cerebral palsy, access to education, assistive device, healthcare, swallowing, and so on. I think there are 220 variables in that form. So what we have achieved so far is over 3,800 children has been registered in Bangladesh. And majority of those children actually, we are now operating in 18 sub-districts in 13 districts. In Bangladesh, there are 64 districts. And mainly actually population-based surveillance is in one particular area, which is Shahjatpur. Rest are opportunistic surveillance, either by invited calls or through any other means. What we have seen since we started, particularly information, this line diagram and bar chart is from Shahjatpur. From 2015 to 2020, we can see that the access to rehabilitation has increased because we are operating in the community, and the timing of cerebral palsy, diagnosis of cerebral palsy, has decreased from 5.3 years to 2.8 years now, and at some point actually went down up to 2 years. So I think even without intervention, ongoing surveillance in a community has merit, and our study is suggesting that. But we have incorporated a lot of intervention as we have done, as we progress, because we strongly believe that research without service actually is unethical, and I think majority of our research funds actually goes to service facilitation. As I said, that the first year, and from that point onwards, actually we kept ourselves busy in the field, at the same time actually in the desk as well, writing papers and reporting our findings. So in 15, the BCPR protocol got published in BMC Neurology. 16, we got our interim data published in DMCN, the AP paper, which is one of the most cited AP papers on CP till date. And then we looked at the other phenotypes of cerebral palsy, and also we studied a wonderful study on mortality of children, cause of death among children of cerebral palsy based on verbal autopsy. And that probably formed a solid ground for us in first 2 years. And from 15 and 16, during that time, I said growth and survival period, where we were faced with challenges actually where what we were not prepared for. We have thousands of children in our database that don't have any service or access to service. So we have to do things to support them. So one thing is that only 4% of children with cerebral palsy who required a wheelchair or needed a wheelchair had access to wheelchair. So need for assistive device actually was acute. So we tried to ship a few wheelchairs from Australia. We managed to take up to 665 wheelchairs. At some point, there was issues with transportation. So we had to be innovative, and we started our own assistive device center in Shahjatpur. And now it has a capacity to build up to 300 wheelchairs per year. And not only wheelchairs, also walkers and corner chairs and feeding chairs, things like that, standing frames. We also looked at the quality of life of children with cerebral palsy, which is a new concept at that time in Bangladesh, and also for majority of the low-income settings. And we also secured funding to extend or continue our ongoing surveillance for BCPR. And during that time, we had a field team, and we also supported the emerging researchers, the junior teams on the ground to be academically active in terms of writing papers, reporting data in conferences and presentations to just spread the word. I was based in Sydney at the time, and I used to make 4 to 5 trips to Bangladesh every year. Short trips, but actually very effective, full-on trips. So Rosalie Power, this slide is Rosalie's PhD. So she got her PhD awarded last year from Uni Sydney, mainly looking at the health-related quality of life of adolescents with cerebral palsy in rural Bangladesh. And through the process, actually, we have to validate a lot of tools, and we have also looked at their sexual health, which is health and well-being, which is Rosalie's expertise as well. And then Ishrat is a public health nutritionist. She has done a tremendous work on nutritional epidemiology of cerebral palsy. We have also looked at the immunization status of children with cerebral palsy in Bangladesh. And particularly this study also highlighted the inequity in essential health service and those services which are even successful in countries like Bangladesh. For example, EPI is a success story for Bangladesh and also for South Africa, I believe. But when you look at the BCG vaccine coverage, which is given at birth, 93% of children with cerebral palsy got BCG at birth. But when you looked at the measles rubella vaccine coverage in children, which was later introduced as a national catch-up campaign, we saw only 66% children with CP have received MR vaccine compared to 90+% in general child population. And when you ask why they were missed, the issues were very simple, is that they don't go to school. So the catch-up campaigns are mostly school-based, so they missed out. Other part is that the healthcare professionals didn't think that they need vaccines, and the parents didn't think that they need vaccines. That they thought that they have severe disability impairments. What difference it will make? Why they will need the vaccine? So those kind of misconception actually even make them more vulnerable to vaccine-preventable diseases. And in our cause of death, we have seen majority of the deaths in these children actually are from severe meningitis, encephalitis, pneumonia, and tuberculosis. At that point, we also felt the need for the access to rehabilitation and education. And only 66% children had access to rehab. And when we talk about rehab, is if a 15-year-old child with spastic quadriplegia have received one physio session in his or her life, we considered as a yes. So it was a very categorical definition. In reality, actually, I would say a very small fragment of those children actually have true access to rehabilitation or early intervention, if there is any. So we started to publish on the apply, and at the same time actually started to design innovative models. So one is that we wanted to see their majority were ultra poor, to see that whether there is an impact of microfinance-based livelihood project in those families in accessing essential healthcare service, including rehab services, and also to see their improvement in nutrition. So this trial has been completed, and the manuscript is coming out in DMC and sometime very soon. And we also, at the time, started some daycare type transitional program, 6 months long, in 2 shifts, 9 to 12 and 1 to 4, 20 kids per batch, led by a community therapist and a local aide, where a 6 months long transition program, mainly on physio, majority manual therapies, speech, and some occupational therapy, and parents' education and peer support were given at community level. We call it Shishu Shorgo, in Bengali means children's heaven. And it was very popular. And Tasneem published on that. It showed a quasi-experimental study. It improved the motor outcome, most importantly, stress, anxiety, and depression among the primary caregivers, because they feel the bondage between other primary caregivers. There are a lot of passive learning as well, and they get confident taking care of their own child. At the same time, we felt that we are getting very much donor reliant, and this program actually needed to scale up and didn't have the means. So we also tried a social business model where we were providing adult neuro rehab services, mainly pain and stroke rehab for adult patients, and revenue generated from that to cross cover children with cerebral palsy. And it took 13 months. Mahmoud and team work on that. It took 13 months before actually we went on break even, and then from 14 months onwards, actually we were making profit, just enough to run those centers. So at the moment, actually, there are 10 centers and it's going on. And I think like it will take a long time actually to summarize everything. I think there are some slides in the end. So if we wrap up the first 4 to 5 years of BCPR, CSF is a small NGO. We believe that small is beautiful, and small has the power to make butterfly effect, a small and impactful effect. And I think we just did that. We had impactful publications. We designed studies which were driven by informations and need on the ground, which were practical. And we also supported early career researchers and local researchers from Bangladesh to come forward and to take this movement forward. And I'm so proud that out of those 5 students, Rosalie is the only one from Australia. The rest of the 4 actually are from Bangladesh. Of those 3 have completed their PhD, including Ishrat and Mahmoud will be awarded PhD in a couple of months' time. So here, our survival recipe is very simple, that we all work hard, but I think as the team on the ground, actually, we all had the same motive and same understanding that we're working for the cause. We work for the career, we work for promotions and publications, we understand that, but at the same time, actually strongly believe that we work for the cause. We heavily invested on our team, not by resources, but I think in terms of time and attention. I think for a young emerging team is very important. Time is very important than money. Because I think the power of supervision and mentoring goes way longer than any transient support you can provide your academic team. Ensured quality. Although we work in a very remote part of Bangladesh, access to internet is an issue. There are manual data collections, so we did cross-validation, double data entry, and so on. So never compromise on quality. And other thing is actually, every time we published to establish the cause. The publication actually helped with my promotion. I got promoted to be a professor very quickly, but I think at the same time, actually, primary objective was to establish the cause through publications, not through data. So what is the biggest motivating factor? So then 2017 onwards, I think we call it the phase of expansion, where we saw that from our BMC Neurology BCPR protocol paper, we started getting a lot of inquiries from many other LMICs that they want to establish CP registries, the formula, and how we can support them. And first, it started from Sri Lanka. Then we went to Indonesia to do a small work in Sumba Island, then went to Nepal, then Vietnam. So it started expanding. And then we were getting inquiry from Zimbabwe, then Ghana and Suriname, Argentina, so and you name it. So soon we got overwhelmed with a lot of interested parties and countries. So we then thought that there is SCPR for Australia, SCP for Europe, but there is nothing for the low-income setting. So during the time, we thought of a global registry. It's a global repository for individual country-level registries who contribute to a global repository, so we can combinedly share the trends and trajectories and regional differences in CP in terms of cause and risk factors, severity, and the phenotypes and things like that, which are very important for program planning. We got funded in 2017 for 2 years. And this is our kind of proposed map where actually we're achieving most of the countries. Actually, this is the wish list, and most of the countries actually have signed up. Latin American CP registry with over 10 countries signing up now. From Africa, we got Ghana, Zimbabwe, and I'm certain that South Africa, I think I'm taking this opportunity to invite South Africa to contribute, and Gillian can share the exciting news that we got funded for a joint project between Bangladesh and South Africa, which could support the rudimentary form of South Africa's cerebral palsy registry. So the mechanism is not very difficult. I think like it needs commitment, but the steps are easy. If you do population-based surveillance, it's expensive, it's time-consuming, but it's important. If you do opportunistic surveillance, you get kind of a polarized data from tertiary institute, which is also important for countries where there is no data. So I think the way we did in Bangladesh, that we're expanding the country, but mostly opportunistic data from the whole country. But we have kept one small area as sub-district as an ongoing population-based surveillance work, which actually gives us a good balance to base our program and design further studies, at the same time actually attract funding from external donors. And it's a kind of win-win. It's a survival balance you have to make. So if you don't have resources now, start from the hospital, from your department, to collect the data and publish few papers, make your pilot, and then go to a population-based study. If you have access to field, like SA-ChilD, you have access to a wider network, then you can target a small area and small neighborhood in South Africa and then start population-based surveillance and match both. It will be so powerful. So GLM CPR, thankfully now nearly reaching nearly 6,000 children registered now. We're getting over 700 from Vietnam most recently. And we are publishing the first papers on the AP at global scale, the nutritional epidemiology and global scale, and also evolution status of children with cerebral palsy at global stage. And I think these are the unspoken words of many thousands of children living in those countries. And I think it's a global movement. That's why I say it actually says an inclusion initiative. It's not research, it's not NGO work, it's not service only. It's an inclusion initiative overall. And 18 and beyond, I call it diversity and sustainability. I think like we got mature, we learned so much from the field, we published so much, the team got matured, and I think the early career researchers, they became now emerging researchers, Ishrat, Mahmoud, they can write protocols overnight. They can conceptualize an idea from a problem they face on the ground overnight, very much scientifically sound. And I'm so proud of that. And so we expanded to other countries. At the same time, actually, in the country, we went up in terms of evidence quality. So before we used to do observational studies, then we did quasi-experimental studies. Now we are doing randomized controlled trials on service delivery model. I just mentioned about the support CP, which is the microfinance-based livelihood program, and then smart CP, where we are looking at the sustainable model of community-based telerehabilitation in low resource settings, which is ongoing now. And we got subsequent funding for the global registry for another 2 years. So I think very exciting for all of us. So in the end, in the last slide, actually, I say it's a very busy slide, that we always focused on the cause and enjoy the journey, and truly enjoy the journey. We are so proud to see that service with research actually go so nicely. And those who looked at us with caution and with some reservations 5-7 years ago, that a small NGO from Bangladesh, actually, how academically fine or astute they would be. We're so proud to show them actually we have generated important evidence. At the same time, we have supported thousands of children in terms of rehabilitation, education, early intervention, and even during COVID-19, where everything were stopped, our major ply at the time actually was not research, because majority of the resistance in the BCPR actually comes from daily wage earners family. So their livelihood actually were at stake. So Ishrat went to Bangladesh. We started a fundraising campaign through crowdfunding, managed nearly $70,000-80,000, and over 16,000 individuals received essential food packages several times during this pandemic. So I think like one thing that I think kept us going, and I think make our life enjoyable, is actually we are extremely flexible. Our objective actually is very diverse, and actually we don't hesitate to change the objectives when there is need and cater for the needs. So in the end, actually, I would say that we are majority world population. Our problems are diverse, but tied to a single thread. I think if we don't speak up for ourselves, if we don't collaborate between us, amongst us, then although we are the majority world populations, we're not the majority world vocal population. So I think like that's the drive that probably at global scale, the cerebral palsy, the cause and its impact, and those children's ply actually we can bring towards at larger scale collectively as a family. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. If that doesn't inspire you, nothing will. I'm exhausted just listening to what you have produced with the resources. And I think in a low middle income setting, we always complain there's not enough money, there's not enough money. And And you've shown that what you were able to do with so little. You started with 7,000, and 7 years later, what you've been able to achieve. And I just think that's hugely inspirational. And yeah, I speak on behalf of all South Africans. I really wish and hope that we will join you in making a difference. Are there any questions from anyone?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes, Tembi.
Thank you very much, Prof. Khandaker, for such a beautiful presentation, very inspiring. I know we've had some interaction prior. We at Tygerberg Hospital in the Western Cape, we are trying to set up a hospital-based registry. And after we had read your papers, we contacted you to try and guide us through this. And I think this is more inspiring to see where you came from, the processes that you went through, and to see where you are now. It's very encouraging, and for this will actually help us to go back to our team and say, I think let's push for the agenda. Just an update to tell you where we are at the moment. We're doing the preliminary studies, trying to get all our background work done prior to getting the protocol out for the registry. But we will definitely be making contact. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Tembi. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may also say, if anyone listening to this podcast, and I know several of you have got good databases in your own settings of children with CP. So as you've seen from what Prof. Khandaker said in his method of the key informant method, I certainly think that we do have the capacity in South Africa in local settings where you are in your hospital based in your district. If you want to join and become part of this register, please drop me a line and let's start working on it. Any other questions? Yeah, so there also was a question here about from Sue Fry, and maybe a question which you can comment on, Gulam, is that what about the young adults? Is there provision to support young adults with disabilities? Because with all our work, you know, we focus on the children, early intervention, but we don't know what happens as children, you know, grow up and become teenagers, particularly the children in level 4 and 5.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think this is an important question. So one worry we all share in Bangladesh is that the original BCPR cohort that we started, actually, we might not see them alive in next couple of years' times, because I think like they die prematurely. And those who manage to survive their childhood, actually, I think have extreme form of disability or impairments and very poor quality of life. So I think the plan for the livelihood program was that whether we can support the family to have some means of living, which where that particular child or young adults could get involved. That's one way. Other way is that the Rosalie's work on quality of life also gave us a lot of insight about the transition from childhood to the teenage years to adulthood. And I think these are all new learnings from us, for us. So I think this is an area, actually, certainly there needs to be more work needs to be done, mainly actually young adults with cerebral palsy. Because I think it's absolutely right that we concentrated so much on the children with cerebral palsy. Because I think in our setting, actually, most of those children will not survive if they're not supported. And those who have survived, actually, I think either they have found some means of respite or rescue that kept them alive. I think because that's interesting. And I think we have another PhD student, Manik Das, who is studying his PhD, and mainly to find out indigenous practices among children with cerebral palsy in low-income settings to see what works and what doesn't work. Because sometimes we have seen innovative practices actually which are cost neutral and less expensive, but actually which are as efficient as any therapies that actually are given in high income settings. So for example, if I tell you, I've seen in rural villages that actually they dig a hole on the ground and let the child stand on that. It's a kind of a big hole, so the child up to their chest. So it kind of does the same purpose of a walker or a standing frame, because they don't have standing frame or concept of standing frame, things like that. I think probably this is an interesting question. I'm taking it on board, and I think probably certainly we need to look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think you've also highlighted the value of collaboration and how much we learn from parents and families themselves. And also, when you say when you're looking at childhood disability, how you've got to have, you can't exclude the economic and the social conditions that families are in, and livelihoods and sustainability. So I think you really are showing the way, and I'd like to just congratulate you. I don't know when you ever sleep, and the fact that you are giving this presentation with COVID and 8:30 at night, I really kind of shows me why you've been as successful as you have. So really take our hats off to you, pay tribute to you, and look forward to future collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Very humble.